Yo, what's up, guys? You probably have seen the Frodo. You have probably already seen this team or similar team, but I'm actually going to be showcasing that this one is actually very easy to rune, how it is to rune, and what you should be focusing on the lower rune requirements. Do not get messed up by like, oh, you have like crazy, like I don't have these kind of stats. You don't need those kind of stats at all, and I will showcase you that in a second. But first I'll showcase you kind of what the max is about that. There's one small issue with Frodo though, and it's best shown in here. And Frodo's animation is super slow. So this skill is not that bad for an animation, but this skill, especially the after part, like, you see how long it takes for him to get back the skills on the right side. Animation is long over, so he has a really long delay on that animation, and therefore Frodo runs in general are a little bit slower because his animation is just shit. However, this thing is just so super strong that it's still recommended to use him in a few places out there. Another thing that I want to keep in mind is that at some point we are going to have the Summoner's War original version for this collab as well. And you can buy those units, buy those pieces from ancient coins. So in this case, I am going to be saving the ancient coins, and I will be testing whether that new unit or the Summoner's War original version is a lot faster in animation. I don't mind to put 500 of these coins to it to get that unit, but that will be something in 4 months. The moment that that unit is released, I will mention that in a video as well, or just mention that in the Discord or somewhere, if that unit is actually faster or not. On the final slot, best in slot is a GBah, but if you do not have a GBah, it's just simply a Monkless. It is 1 second slower. If we go for the GBah right here, I'm just gonna go through a run and showcase you how it works in the single run. So in this case, whether it does skill 1 or skill 2 really doesn't matter, but it will always give the attack buff, which is the important part. If we hit anything on the side, we do a 1000 shot, you very easily kill. I will showcase you how much damage I did on that in just a second with the current runes that I'm having, and then I'll showcase you how much further you can go down on that. In this case, the skill 2 is a fine skill if it uses it over here, but it's better if it uses it in wave 1. Because in this case, we can still get a death break in here. If we get a death break in here, we do a slight bit more damage. And this comes into an interesting fact as well. If you were to put Rage on your Prillia could one-shot from this position on if you are just above the 51%. In this case, I was just under the 51%. So the passive of that thing already kicked in, and mine is on triple fight right now. So whether we do skill 1 or skill 2 or in this one, doesn't really matter. And then from here, it is actually nice if you get a death break in, because if you do get a death break in, you don't need the double turn on the Luna to actually kill anything. Because in this case, you would need a double turn to actually kill. That is pretty much how the whole run goes. This will be a 21-second run because you needed the double turn for the Luna to kill anything. If you don't have the double turn, it would be a 20-second team. It's as simple as that. This Julie right here was doing like, I think 8Ks and then into 5Ks. You don't need that much damage. The actual damage you need is enough that I tested it. If I remove the whole right side artifact, which is where you get most of the damage from, I can still nearly one-shot it. I don't exactly one-shot it anymore, but it's still a nearly one-shot. So if we go for this and we go for that, we are doing 4.2 and a halves, and this is just on the edge of not killing. So what do you need to do? 4.3k on those final hits. So that is exactly what I can tell you over there. If you're doing those 4.3ks on those hits over there, it is already good enough to kill, which is definitely fairly doable for a lot of people, I would say. Yeah, that makes things a lot easier to kill. Also for this one, if this thing is above the 50% mark, Luna would just simply kill, and then we just go on from there. Also in this case, same thing. Over here, we would leave those with a little bit of HP. Okay, maybe a little bit more. There's some damage fluctuation. That, let's say, to be safe, 4.4 and you're good to go. Then all of these things would easily die. And in most cases, where do you get most of the damage output from? You're not going to get damage output from getting a better Rage Rune or anything like that. Most of the damage output is just simply the additional damage artifacts, because the additional damage artifacts are adding way more than the little bit of attack that I got. Like, sure, I removed 100 attack base. Yes, but removing the additional damage artifact by additional damage by attack, that is where the actual big gains sits in for getting a lot more damage in on this, because the artifact that I just removed was this artifact right here. This one, no, wait, that is on score. This one right there. Something that you can work with for artifacts as well right now is a combination line of attack increasing effect with additional damage by attack. That is technically the strongest line. I just don't really have those. Like, sure, you could think about it, it's like, oh, is this line maybe better than what I currently have? I don't think so, because this is just a super high roll on that. And this one is just a very, very good one because it also has the damage on water. But if you happen to have something that has like 12 in here and then maybe like a 12 in there as well, that is probably better than just trying to go, well, this might actually, if this had or does have damage on water, I actually want to see if this does do more damage. I don't think so, because the left one is already really good as well. Maybe if this line was something more useful-ish, but I kind of want to see. So I was doing around 5Ks per hit. I want to see the additional damage or the attack increasing effect. Actually, how much that adds in, because that might be a very good value for getting more damage in as well. So I was doing about 5Ks on final hits, 4.8. So that's already what you still see, is like the additional damage by attack is by far the strongest value you can get on artifacts out there. But if you have some sideline and you can grind something in, then that is definitely still an option. In this case, once again, if you had a rage on Aprilia, you could go a second faster, but his Death Break isn't full rate, and also him using Death Break at the right time isn't full rate. But you can be a little bit faster if you put your Aprilia towards triple fight, or towards rage, sorry, not triple fight. And in this case also, that gives you more of a chance to clear when he already landed the Death Break. So too bad he doesn't have a full rate of Death Break itself, but yeah, it's still pretty decent right there. However, a lot of people will definitely mention, how about the homunculus? We need the homunculus. We cannot do that with this unit, so homunculus in there. I actually have to give rune to the homunculus, so let me quickly give some runes to the homunculus. Okay, kind of overdid it with the crit rate, but just showcasing that doesn't really matter all too much. Luna is still on a good set. That is definitely a thing, but also for Luna, you could definitely lower the whole set by a good bit to still get into damage range. So whether you do skill 1 or skill 2, doesn't really matter in this case. Luna will move, Luna will still kill if it's above the 50 range, which is really nice. So therefore your homunculus still has the S3 available in this wave right here. We don't start off with a Death Break, but it's not a big issue. We go for that skill into this skill, and then it's still clear. So this is still 21 seconds. It might run up to like 21 or 22 seconds. So the Deborah is... Sure, the Deborah is 1 speed faster, but it's not that big of a miss. Plus, this is a lot easier to rune than that whole team for the Sigmarus that I was using before. And I would say for the Tesha team is mostly running towards like 25-ish seconds, so it is definitely a faster team right there if you would run this. But of course, Deborah's 1 second faster. Brilliant on Rage would be half a second faster as well. So for the rune showcasing, just overall the rune showcasing, also with what you have to focus on, but also definitely you don't need to do as much as I'm doing. So I have a triple fight on here. You definitely do want to go accuracy over here. In this case, it's also where you want to have your Aprilia move after the Julie, because Julie doesn't need Aprilia to kill anything of the waves. As mentioned, this Julie was overshooting the damage on the whole thing by about like a good 15% or something. So you definitely can go lower stats. I would recommend to go for a Fatal set. I think most people are already farming a fair bit of Giants, that they probably have a good Fatal set rather than a good Rage set. And the main damage, as mentioned, comes from additional damage artifacts. You definitely want to focus on a high additional damage by attack, and then maybe some damage on water or an attack increasing effect, those kind of things. But most of your damage output will come from there. Aprilia, if you have really good runes, put your Aprilia towards Rage. You still need the 35 accuracy. Speed doesn't matter as long as you're faster than the 169 combat speed, which is the speed that you see over here on the screen. If you don't know how to turn those on, this is how you turn it off. And this is how you turn it on, by clicking on the thing here on the bottom left. And then, of course, you also go damage on water and that kind of good stuff. For Luna, you want to go pretty high on the crit damage. And then, of course, damage water, and then crit damage is 3. And for the homunculus, you also want to go damage on water, and then most likely like a crit damage first, or like a crit damage from enemy less HP, because it mostly hits at the end of a run anyways. So this is definitely a very strong team. I would recommend everyone that has like mid-game-ish runes to try out this team. I definitely do think that you can run this a lot easier than expected. Maybe it's not going to be running the 22 seconds, but maybe at 23 or 24 seconds. But it's definitely faster than the Tesha team out there. However, it is important though, if you feel like, oh, I can't run this, it's probably an artifacts issue and it's not a runes issue, because artifacts issue make you hit the threshold on the Julie a lot easier. Then we do also have the team on Dragon. So I have people seen run this team, but I'm personally not a big fan. There's actually a few options to it. You could also go for this. You could also go for this out there. I've seen some people also do only showcase runs where he always lands his Death Break on the skill 1. He's not always gonna land his Death Break on the skill 1. Plus, you have to keep in mind that this thing is a longer cooldown, so therefore it is not allowed for him to actually use his S3 on the mid boss because he doesn't take a turn before getting to the final boss, so therefore he would not get his skill back. And therefore, this run just simply doesn't work if he takes a turn on the mid boss. So what you mostly want to do is either this or this or this or anything along those lines. But the big issue is, in the end, the team with the Agrius is just simply a lot better. Which is just simply this team. And the thing is, the Seek plus the Luna are already clearing waves. Plus your Agrius already gets speed buff from itself. And the attack buffs in the turns it needs from the two birds. So therefore, Frodo doesn't really add anything in this. Plus, as mentioned earlier, Frodo has super slow base animation. So therefore, a Seek animation is way faster. And I would not recommend to use a Frodo team in here. Sure, you could if you cannot build the Agrius team. But in the end, Agrius team, this one is never gonna fail. Whereas the Frodo is still dependent on some dev breaks here and there. So I definitely would recommend to run this team. Or the version with the Nezuko where you have like the triple boost up. Like the one boost into the Julie and that kind of shenanigans. These teams are a lot better than try to put Frodo in your Dragons team. Other places where you could use Frodo, I would say in this one, would not recommend it because of the wrong element issue. This one, you do have the Agrius team, which is just crazy good, so it's not really a good place over there as well. In R5, it is definitely usable. The only thing that I'm not 100% sure about is would he desync teams? Because in this case, the best spot where you can place him in is in that Seek team over here, because Seek doesn't always go for a S3. It's just a 70% S3. So I could see it being used in this team. That is definitely an option out there. In this case, he would also stall that the Katarina does always move after. But I think he could also slightly stall the whole run by doing his S2, because his S2 is just super slow on animation and therefore might slow down the run, and you don't really need the attack buff Katarina to clear it. It just lowers the rune requirements if you do get that always. But it's not really a necessity to get that in. So I think he might actually slow the run by just having such slow freaking animations. However, for this, there was one team that I was thinking of, and it would only work if a specific unit gets perfect AI. And I don't think it does, but he might. And that will be this. And yes, we're using Mav in Dragons. I have this small hunch of feeling that he might be able to get perfect AI because there's units on low attack bar, and therefore you might do your speed buff. But also units already use skills, and therefore you might lower their cooldown on the perfect AI scenario, which then does give the option for your Liam to actually move in the final boss wave, but still get this skill back, even though it is a one cooldown too long. If this actually works, I'm not too sure. Also, we would give speed buff and attack buff to the Agrius, but let me rune this up and let me try this out once in like a perfect run scenario that I click the skills by myself if it actually does work what I'm trying to do. And then also we're gonna let it auto for a bit. I don't think this would work, but if it would work, it would be very, very strong. Okay, so after a bit of reruning, also did think about other things such as, can I make Agrius move fast enough with like a Miriam speed boost and then like 50 on the additional damage? And then 50 on the extra speed over here, plus the Miriam, another 35. And make Agrius just simply double turn after 2 units already moved. But that's not really possible, because then the other 2 units would have that much speed gap on this, or like... Because in that case, this thing already gave like so much speed tick that it's really hard to outspeed it with Agrius twice and that kind of stuff. So let's see if this works. I don't think it would work, but let's just see if it does. So we have this into the one shot. Yep, that is totally fine. We have this into you do reset. That is the good part. So even if you do use that skill right now, it's kind of fine. So we have this into this going in again. Big question is, Mav, are you gonna S3 right now? Because, nah, it doesn't S3. If he S3'd over there, I would have had the speed buff already up. And then I would have also lowered the cooldown on you. So too bad you don't have a perfect AI for using your skills. Because if you did, you would have actually given way more value because of this. Let me actually see if I did calculate the turns correctly. Let's see if the idea behind the team actually does work if I have all of the cooldowns right and if I were to do enough damage. So in this case, that would be a kill right there, and then this would be easily killing that. Then in here, if we do get the death break, then it would be already super easy, because then I don't really need this in the first place to kill anything as well. But that would be the rotation on that if it were to work. This one, whatever you do, doesn't really matter all too much. And then we're gonna go for this over here, that over there. Then I do have the cooldown for using this, but unfortunately it doesn't always do that. If we were to go for skill 1 right now, and from here, you should be able to kill. That would be pretty darn fast. Let me actually see if I can get a full auto run, because I'm curious to see how fast this would be if it were to always work. Too bad Math doesn't have a perfect AI, and he would be actually really perfect in slot if he did, because it gives the speed buff, which is something that we're looking for, and it gives the cooldown decrease. And because of both, it is really nice. Like, sure, you could say Bernard does have perfect AI. Yes, Bernard does have perfect AI, but you cannot guarantee Liam not using his S3 in that wave. That is just the main issue, because sure, if you get your death break in early, it is nice, but you still cannot guarantee to get that in. So now we get the right skill in, skill 2. Oh, that might be nuts. Yeah, okay. Okay, so if he skill 2's over there, it's not enough damage in the first place. So doesn't really work out as I was hoping it to. Sure, if you have a branding, then maybe you would start dealing more damage and that kind of stuff, and then you would get to it. But yeah, this would already be a little bit slower. I still want to see, just for references, how fast would that be if it were to work? Just to see like how fast is the potential on this run. But in the end, I would just recommend to go for a Seek Agrius team on this, and that's pretty much as good as it gets, and it doesn't really get much better than that. So also for you, you don't use your skill right now. Probably I would have to self-tap in mid-boss and final boss just to get the right skills in, and then I can kind of check. Otherwise, I'm just really betting on RNG to get me a good run, which is not always the case in this case. We kind of have to go for skill 1 over there, or we have to kill with this. So it's still kind of possible. I'll just like semi-manual, semi-auto just to get like a fast run in. I want to see if this actually runs like 20-ish seconds, or it's still like more than that. So in this case, we would go for your skill into your skill. Yep. We go for your skill into your skill into S3 into S1 into kill. Okay. Then we can auto on this once again. Yep. Yep. And then we go for you into you into you into this skill into the S3. And with that kill, that does kill. So that would be how I would like to see a run always go. It's definitely not going to happen. Then it's 26 seconds. No, that's still a lot slower. So any team with Frodo on dragons, I would just straight up go for like Agrius. Well, also this doesn't work as I was so pleased. But even with me tapping the right skills altogether, this was still a lot slower than the Agrius style that we did with Double Bird Agrius with Julie and a Seek. So definitely would recommend to still keep running that. However, he is a best in slot for Giants, and I think it's definitely not that difficult to rune it for Giants altogether as well. Sure, I did do it with very high rune requirement kind of stuff, but it's just going to be 1 speed slower if you do that with the other things. And as mentioned, you can definitely use the homunculus in there. This one is definitely something that I would recommend everyone to run. As a last bit of the video, I tried to get the Julie to enough damage on triple fight to still one-shot the wave. I'm very close though. I can't really make it just yet, but it's actually super, super close. So if we look at this right now for the damage output that we have over here, it is pretty close for me to actually do this on triple fight. But then I noticed it's actually not that great to put it on triple fight, because if you do land that death break over there, then this skill doesn't do enough damage in the first place to actually kill anything. So I would recommend, if you want to make the Julie plus the Brillia one-shot the mid-boss, or like, well, 3-turn the mid-boss, let's call it that way, then you would have to probably go for a fatal fight on the Julie rather than a triple fight on the Julie. Unless you have absolute insane triple fight runes, but it does just showcase that you don't need that much stats to actually get this wave to clearing. Because as you can see, I'm having near to no crit damage on this build right now. And this is the build that we would get if we put a fatal set to it, and that would more than easily start killing waves. Plus, let's see a rotation where we do have the mid-boss being killed by the Brillia itself, which is definitely very possible right now. So if we get a death break, if we don't get a death break, it ain't gonna happen. So that's the main thing. Okay, do we get a death break? Did get a death break, did get an S2, and then this. Oh, by the sliver of health. Okay. Brillia not doing enough damage, apparently. So we need a little bit more damage on the Brillia to make that work. So that part is actually relatively difficult to rune. But outside of this, the whole boss is, or like the whole run is super easy to rune. It's just getting the Prelia to one-shot on an S3. That part is a little bit difficult. So guys, thanks a lot for watching for this one. If you have any teams with Frodo which are actually better than some of the best in slot teams out there right now, let me know in my DMs or just in the comment section. And see you as always in the next one. Thanks for watching. If you would like to see more guides, join the Discord and check out the content tab for the guide video archive, which contains all of the guides that you might need. Hope to see you there.